Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Now in ENC segment. For those of you who maybe never tuned into a Now in ENC segment before, it's a fun segment we get to do here at WNCT where we dive into some local topics, local events happening here in the East, and bring on some special guests to help further those conversations. So today I am joined by Dr. David Harlow from Vidant Medical Center. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. And today is National Vaccination Day. So I kind of want to talk to you about, the history and significance of vaccinations because they've been, in our country's history for quite some time and globally for even longer. So could you give us a little bit of, background maybe about the history of vaccinations and the importance of those?
Sure. It's not too fine a point to put on it to say that vaccinations have been one of the most effective weapons that we've had against disease. And it doesn't take too long to turn back history. If you look back in the 50s, polio, for instance, was one of the most feared diseases that one could get. And vaccination was developed for that early on. We learned a lot about those vaccination techniques. And then, quite frankly, there has not been a polio outbreak in the United States since 1979. There have been a few instances where somebody had contracted it overseas and brought it back with them that we've had to treat, but that just goes to show how effective they really are.
Absolutely. And in doing some of my, my own research in this topic, I read that it was as far back as like 1000 AD that they have, possible evidence that, the Chinese were using vaccinations or inoculating people with immunizations. And I just think that is like mind blowing to really kind of put that into perspective of how long these types of medical practices, I guess, have been going on. And I think that's just so fascinating. And I kind of wanted to talk to you, of course, in the past couple of years, we've had a historical movement of vaccinations within the world with the coronavirus. So, talk to me about the historical significance of that, because isn't it fairly rare to have a vaccine kind of come out as quickly as those did?
Oh, it's extremely rare. The techniques used to develop vaccines with new modern technology are certainly faster, but it's a very expensive process. And I think what we saw early on in the COVID pandemic was that the entire government got behind that. And so with the high-speed computer technology that we have and lots of other very significant technological advances over the last decade, it made that possible. Had we turned back the clock maybe 15 years, all the money in the world wouldn't have changed that.
For sure. And why are vaccinations important? I know, a lot of school children, you're required to get certain immunizations before, returning to certain grading schools. So why is it important, to have vaccinations readily available and for people to get these vaccinations for themselves, for their children?
Yeah, we have a collective amnesia about what it was like not to have those childhood vaccines. Childhood deaths in the early 1900s were very pervasive. And with the advent of vaccines, we've seen childhood deaths decline. As a matter of fact, there was a study in 2021 that suggested that 33,000 childhood deaths were prevented by the childhood vaccination strategies that we currently employ. I know there's been a lot of talk about, a lot of people a little bit incredulous of whether or not they are effective or whether you should or not. From a strictly medical perspective, it is one of the most safe things that one could do for you or your children, whichever the vaccine is. And I would point to, something simple, relatively like the shingles vaccine for older people. It only takes a friend of yours to get shingles to realize, if that's something I can prevent with a vaccine, that might be something I ought to do. It's very painful, but it's so readily available, and we have so much technology. I really, I'm thrilled that there's a celebration of that, because it is, again, in the history of medicine, it is one of the most significant advances that humankind has ever produced.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Harlow, for joining us. I think this is a really interesting topic and some great information that I think a lot of people will be very interested to learn and hear about. So thank you so much for your time today. It's much appreciated. And thank you guys for watching another segment of Now and ENC, and we'll see you next time.